The Collective Whisper Podcast with Simon Kane. Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. Today I'd like to welcome Kieran O'Reilly. Kieran O'Reilly is an actor, musician and producer. Kieran is a real-life police detective who worked for many years as an undercover drugs operative. He is known for his role in the Emmy award-winning television series Vikings as White Hair. Kieran arrived onto the acting scene in 2013 with a critically acclaimed performance in Ireland's television crime drama Love Hate as Detective Garda Ciarán Madden, and in 2016 was nominated for the Discovery Award at the Dublin International Film Festival. He is also the singer-songwriter of the Irish alternative band Hail the Ghost. Okay, welcome to the show, Kieran. How are you?
I'm good, thanks very much, and thanks for having me.
No problem. You're in Dublin there. What's the weather like?
It's surprisingly good, but like every day, you're afraid to commit because it could be lashing in an hour, you know. But it's good. Sunshine.
Yeah, very nice. I like your office space behind you there. Some nice photos and music collection. It's great to see that, you know.
This took me about 10 years to get because it was a bedroom, it was a dumping room, it was a playroom. So I fought very hard to get this room. So I kind of have to make use of it now and justify it, you know.
Brilliant. Do you find yourself now, obviously with COVID, do you find yourself working a lot from the office?
Yeah, I kind of use this room for kind of writing music, and I've kind of written films and stuff. And I'm actually at the moment I've started a novel. I don't know why, but I have. So I'm in here a bit working away. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's really good. I mean, it's good you have your finger in all these different pies. It's really interesting.
It's not deliberate. It's just kind of these things kind of nearly present themselves. And for some reason, I'm like a kind of, I kind of chase the bone, you know, I can't not do it, if you know what I mean. So some things I just have a compulsion to kind of immerse myself in or discover or explore. But like, to be honest with you, when I said, I done an interview with Brendan O'Connor one time on the Saturday Night Show, and I said in the interview, you know, I've started writing this novel, which I had at the time. But the reason why I committed to say that on television was because I was trying to force myself and be accountable to myself in my own words to actually go through with it and finish it. But that kind of other projects got in the way. But I'm back at it now, so I'm.
That's good. I mean, I'm kind of like that myself. I never like to limit myself, you know, if there's something, and every few years, you know, new things can pop up in your life or new challenges, and you can say to yourself, wow, I think I could do that, or I have an interest. And it's kind of like that inner voice that's pushing you, saying, why not try this? Or you've had an interest in this for a while. So I think it's great when people embrace new challenges and go for it, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like where you have this little thing saying, I think I could do it, and I think I'd enjoy it. It's those things, real simply, you know.
Yeah. So tell us, Kieran, at the moment for you, you know, like obviously a lot of things came to a halt for you as well with COVID. Are you back doing stuff now, or, you know, have you stuff in the pipeline?
Yeah. Music, we are trying to organise kind of our first rehearsal back actually with Hail the Ghost. So we're trying to find Ian Core and pull him out of his house. But we're just trying to find it. Ian's hiding under a bed, and we're trying to organise that. And actually, maybe next week we'll all be standing in a room together, which is great. And we're gonna start working. Kind of, we're not gonna hang around. We're gonna start working on the third album straight away. You know.
Brilliant. That's great. And have you been filming the last few months, or are a lot of productions still like stopped?
I think they're coming back. During COVID, I did one short film actually. I think that's. I just got a call off the production yesterday, and I think the PR for that's going to start. It was a film that I suppose I'm only assisting. I'm only kind of aiding, supporting a young girl actually from Tala. She's a girl with Down syndrome, and she's fantastic. And so I did a short film with her, and I think that's going to be publicised in the next couple of days. I'm not sure whether they have a release date yet or not, but it's called Wanna Hang Out. That was one film I did, and I'm actually going to kind of work on a television show next week. I go up to North for that. So.
Brilliant. That's great. It's great that you're busy.
Yeah, I should probably say what it is.
If you like, yeah, go on.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a television show called Daglish. Uh, so yeah, I think it's set in the 1970s as a kind of a crime drama or something. So I mean, if it transpires to be rubbish, you can delete that bit of the interview.
Well, this will be out maybe before the TV show's out, so don't worry. Yeah, it's good. Sometimes I don't, if someone says I'm filming something and I'm like, oh, what's it called? And they're like, I can't say yet. So I kind of let them
Oh
bring it up
yeah, yeah.
themselves.
Actually, I don't even know whether I'm allowed to say it or not. So, but it's out now. So, whatever, it's fine.
Don't worry, we'll do a big bleep over.
That's fine. Sure, throw it.
For sure. So let's go back a little. So your family, I see you were a twin. Was there only you, and was it a boy or a girl in the family, or how many children were there?
I had a twin brother, and I have a twin brother, and I have a younger sister and a younger brother. Us being the twins, we were the eldest. So
are you identical twins, or what's the story with the twin situation? It can be different, no?
No, we're 100% not. But I actually would have loved to have been. I think in ways, depending on how handsome or ugly we were. I would have liked to experience that. But no, we're very different. We're actually bipolar opposites. Like my twin brother has he probably wouldn't like to admit this, but he's balding, and he's dark hair, and he's full of tattoos, and yeah, he's very different interests. Like he came to one of my shows one time in Whelan's, and he came, and after the show he said, yeah, maybe one or two songs were all right, but wouldn't be my thing altogether. That was his feedback.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard this girl saying once to a guy. She said to him, "You're quite good looking," and he said, "Yeah, and I have a twin." And he said, "You should see him." And about 20 minutes later, the twin walked up to the bar, and he was identical. He was not, he was an identical twin, and we couldn't stop laughing,
No, I think that the twins always they have a very intimate knowledge of each other, and there is probably a thing where I think they have an innate understanding of how things are apportioned. I think so anyway. We both know what we got.
No, and actually, just staying on that twin thing for a minute, were you very close growing up? Like, do you feel that there's a different bond when you have a twin?
Yeah, I do think there's a different bond. I mean, to be honest with you, if my brother walked into the room, I'd know what mood he was in, and I'd know if there was something wrong, or I'd know straight away without any words in a matter of seconds. Like, I'd know. Just, you kind of read each other very quickly, but also, like, the closer you are to someone, I suppose it's probably not a good thing, but you kind of do take them for granted. So there's like there are no boundaries in ways, and but yeah, I think we like, there are times when we mightn't see each other for a long time, and then we'll see each other, and like during the COVID there, we walked just around Trinity College at night and up Dawson Street on our own, just the two of us. The streets were totally empty. And it was one of the nicest times I've had with him. We were just talking, shooting the breeze, him about his world, me about mine. And, the only commonality was a coffee in each hand. And it was nice,
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think that's the one plus from COVID, is that families became closer, and, they rediscovered things in each other again.
No? Definitely. I think that to understand and appreciate the family unit is a huge, conceptually, it's something that probably has escaped us. It really has. I mean, fundamentally, we're all about family and love, and you know what? There's not much outside that. I know we think there are, but we think there is, but there's not really. Like, it's that's the crux of our existence is who you love and how you exist. I think anyway. I might be wrong.
No, you're right, because I think now in this last year or so, that's shown that a lot, because, when all you have is the four walls and the roof around you, and, it's like there's, you have restrictions, you can't go anywhere. You either have to get on with the people you love and that's around you, or else kill each other. And, that's killing each other is not an option. So the thing is, I think what happens for a lot of families, they've found a way to love each other again in different ways, but they've rediscovered who they are and what their brothers and sisters are doing, and fathers and mothers, So as you said, that bond of love has really grown. The world might seem kind of fucked outside, but I think in the family unit it's become stronger.
Yeah, I do think so. And I think our perception of what that is or what it was for us has changed. And also I think that we've changed, and we've been forced into it. We've been changed to accept or to maybe look at the things we have differently and maybe to appreciate them, I think, because there's value in it,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
This is a very deep podcast. I love this. I need to lie down.
Yeah, that's good. We'll have you relax now. A nice cup of coffee and no Prozac or anything, though. Don't worry, we won't go that far. So tell us about your early life in Dublin. Like, what was it like growing up there? Because I see that you went to Killian's National School in Tala. So would you consider yourself like a born and bred Tala man, or were you in the Tala scene when you were growing up in the 80s and 90s?
I mean, Tala is it's a kind of a special place, and it was always a bit of a mad place as well. But yeah, I would consider myself a Tala man, but we were nomads. We were always on the move to some degree. But I spent I spent my my home life in various parts of Tala. We kind of settled in Kingswood Heights. But I would consider myself. I was sneaking up to Brookfield and all these crazy places when I was a teenager, and but I spent a lot of my time in town. I kind of see myself maybe as more of a city person, because from the age of 11 I was going to school in Sing Street in town, and a lot of my friends were from the flats like Ivy Trust, Charlemont Street, Mercer Street, Dolphins Barn, all those places like Bishop Street flats, and yeah, so that they were my informative years were more. It was more city based,
Yeah, and obviously growing up in the you're born 79, I think. So growing up in the late 80s and 90s, and as a teenager, was it hard to stay out of trouble? Because I'm sure you had obviously good elements and bad elements, but it depends which crowd you fell in with, no?
Totally, yeah, totally. I mean, totally. I think we had a very strict upbringing, and there wasn't much maneuverability to be renegades, in some respect. I mean, we all got into trouble, and we all took chances, and a lot of it was experimental stuff, and we all did crazy things, and some of that stuff got back and some of it didn't. And I suppose nowadays, especially, I think you're on the roulette wheel with choices you make and whether you kind of make it through them or not. Like, and a lot of the times, like say, yeah, we did. We like friends of ours. You grew up in Dublin. Everyone knows a person that fell into drugs. Everyone knows a person that has done some serious crime. Everyone knows a person that has done extremely well academically. So like you were never too far away from anything.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Moved across to Kingswood Heights when we were 10, and that was like the Fox Rock part of Tala. It was swanky. I mean, I don't know how we actually, because they were private houses, so I don't know how we afforded that. I don't know how we got across there. But our lives all changed then, in the sense that we were kind of privileged nearly then, and we grew up in a lovely area, and it wasn't without its trouble either, But Tala was a very, very, I think, healthy place to grow up in some respects. We were lucky to be living in Kingswood. We went to St. Killian's School there. I had a good selection of friends. I spent a lot of time with a man called Peter Fitzpatrick, who actually ran for general election in 2016, but he was my best friend since the age of 9. And we just spent our time walking up and down to the square, going to the cinema, just hanging around. There was a couple of heads that we used to play football with. David Walsh from the band Stand and then Empire Circus and Ears Have Walls, he lived directly across the road from me. And that band, essentially Neil Urell and Carl Dowling and Alan Doyle, they were all scattered around the place. So like there was musicians around the place. They were probably my first exposure to a band. I remember when we were 10 or 11, they were a year or two older than us. They asked us, would we help, me and my brother, would we help bring their drums? Because Carl Dale had never done that for himself. And that's a joke. But anyway, I'm going to joke. Would we bring the drums down to the community centre? And of course, geez, this was like these were like superstars to us, like, you know. So me and my brother did, you know, and then when we helped them kind of put them on the stage, they set up and they said, we'll play 2 or 3 songs for you. So me and my brother sat there and they played 2 or 3 songs, and we were gobsmacked. It was like we were in awe of all these people. And then they said, right, you know, we played the 2 or 3 songs, get out, you know. So we had to go out. And
you guys kind of got the sound check.
Yeah. We did. We definitely got a charitable kind of insight into their songs.
They were telling you it was a private concert, but it was really a sound check. So whether you were there or not.
And they used to play in the local pub, the Clock Tower, you know, and they were heroes, you know, around it. And actually, I kind of grew up kind of in their shadows. And David Walsh's father, Jimmy Walsh, a legend of a man, he used to take me as a young fella to their gigs, and they used to play in different pubs and bars and whatever else. And I kind of went in with Jimmy, and I fell in love with the band, I fell in love with them, and actually we're still very good friends. They went to live in New York for 6 or 7 years, and I was always going over. I used to get flown out to fight the NYPD. So I'd get a free flight. I'd land, have a fight with an NYPD man, and then I'd go drinking. Typical Irish.
Usually it's the other way around. You go drinking and then have a fight with the NYPD.
Yeah. This time around, they'd be bringing you. You know, we'd all be drinking, and then they'd drop you off. You know.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy.
But, so I just turn up in New York, and
well, just for the listeners now, because they're probably thinking, why was he fighting the NYPD? So Kieran used to be a boxer, so he was boxing.
Yeah, I was boxing. Since the age of 16. Sorry, I should qualify that. But so basically, when I joined the job, like you know, I was afforded the opportunity to fight, you know, on the boxing team, and little did I know at the time that what that entailed was it was slightly less the professional you know, regime that other kind of high performance things would have been. It was like you fly out, like you could be like literally dragging yourself to the hotel with jet lag after having a 14-hour delay or something. You'd be fighting that night, and like you're, you know, and literally, I remember the first time we fought was in 2000 in a place called the Armory in Manhattan, and the place was full, a couple of thousand people there. And I was fighting against a fella called Gerard Suden, who was a fire department FDNY man. And he was actually subsequently a hero of the 9/11 disaster. He was pulling people out of the Twin Towers, and I think it badly affected him. But he was an absolute gentleman. So I fought him in 21 years ago, actually. And literally, as I was getting out of the ring, like I was handed 2 points and told, "We don't want to see you for the week," you know, which was like, I did. And the boys on that team are amazing people. They were amazing people. Some of them are coaches now, and they're amazing. So, but I kind of very strange time. So like it's gas. Like you're basically a kid getting off a plane. You're fighting this man who's a New Yorker, and then you're going hanging with your mates in a band, you know, down the road who have taken the bold step.
What age were you at that time?
I was 20. And I remember actually it's gas because the night before I flew out, and I was petrified actually. The night before I flew out, I actually fought a fella called Paddy Dormer, who he'd actually fought Kenneth Egan, I think, in an Irish final. But I fought Paddy Dormer in a pub in Paulstown, and like when I got into the ring, my head was nearly at the ceiling of the thing, and it was just a sea of farmers with cigarettes and Guinness. It was bizarre, you know, but it was good times, you know. That's life.
Yeah, that was really organised cockfighting, like in around the pub.
Oh yeah, and I was the last man on, and I was a dub, and you know they don't like dubs down there, so it was fairly intimidating, you know. But in fairness, I won, so they had to suck it up, you know.
You know, obviously, when you were younger then, and you were, you know, you went on to join the police force, but going over there and, you know, fighting with the NYPD, did that have an influence on you becoming a cop?
No. I wanted to be a cop since I was 10. And I made a decision when I was around 10. I needed justice in my life, to put it simplistically. And I think that, you know, that vocation was a magnetism with it. I just wanted to do that, you know. I needed to kind of right wrongs, if you know what I mean. I needed to kind of do something. I needed to be, you know, proactive with regard to my contribution. I needed to kind of do something. I was fascinated. By drugs. I was fascinated by murders, and not in a I'm actually quite a squeamish person, but for some reason, you know, the notion of doing the right thing was an overwhelming, kind of factor for me. I mean, I was always into art, always. Like, I actually got a scholarship to go to a scholarship to Pine Valley Art Studios to do a portfolio preparation course to the NCAD. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, I'd made a decision when I was 10, and when I kind of lock onto something, it's very, very difficult for me to kind of interrupt that, So I went up to Pine Valley, and then I actually went around to the NCAD for this kind of open day before you submit your portfolio and your application and all that stuff. And I walked in, and these amazing artists were everywhere. And I remember kind of looking at the works that they were doing, and I just thought they were phenomenal. And I just felt that I wouldn't have been good enough for that, And maybe it was a different world. And I suppose I was still finding myself. If the person I am now walked in, notwithstanding all the things I've done in life, and if the person I am now at this juncture in my life has taken a long time to get here, I probably would submit that application and that portfolio now, but not then.
Not then, yeah. And obviously, what age did you join the police force? Was it later in your 20s or earlier?
Well, I kind of left school. All I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to do. I mean, you are in a school in the city centre of Dublin, and all your mates and everyone in your class is from the flats, and you say, stupidly enough, when you're 12 or 13, I want to be a cop. It doesn't go down well,
Yeah, I was thinking that there, because I was thinking, obviously, being in Tala alone, you'd have a lot of, what's the word, kind of people looking at you like, you want to be a what? You want to be a cop, So I'm sure that was, it's hard when you're young and you're thinking, what's wrong with that? I just want to do good things and everything. But you have people saying, well, you're going to be the enemy, maybe, no?
Yeah, well, I think everyone has a different experience. And to be honest with you, I'm definitely not saying that some people aren't justified in those opinions. I'm definitely not saying that I agree with everything on both sides. I don't, I'm very much a kind of a lone wolf, and I very much do my own thing, and I can understand. I mean, I grew up on the other side, like, with all these fellas in the flats, and we were running around town, causing havoc, and it was great crack. And I did lose a couple of mates when I committed to actually going. But I understood it, I understood it. But I have to say that I don't believe I will never let a job define me, no matter what it is. I'm my own person, and I kind of like to try anyway. It's not easy, but you like to try and live a good life and do the right thing. And I think that I've worked very hard on certain things, and I think that principally, from a moralistic point of view, I believe that certain decisions I've made over the years, I believe was the right decisions, and I've done the right thing.
I think, you'd always hear growing up, people, I know people who are guards, and I've met people who are thugs and so on. And they always, obviously, there's a kind of an oil and water thing going on there. And, you'd hear people saying, oh, he's a head like a guard, And now what's even funny is the joke that was going around during COVID where people used to say, if you ask someone a question and they'd say, a guard wouldn't, if you said to somebody, where are you going? They'd say, a guard wouldn't ask me that. But then obviously during COVID, the guards were asking people, where are you going? So that kind of came around full circle.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't like being known as a guard. I don't even like the word. I just like to kind of do, good work and whatever else. And without getting into that side of things, I mean, I can appreciate every side. And I'm quite content to be on to understand and appreciate every side. And I see myself as just a man that came from Dublin and grew up in the city and lived in Tala and I just have a job. That's it. And to be honest with you, like, notwithstanding all that, like, I don't want that to ever influence the life that you kind of try and pursue, so for me, I'm just Kieran, and that's it.
Yeah, well, I think that's important because I think whatever you want to be and wherever you want to do it, you have to kind of go for it, because there will be always people that say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You know yourself, being a musician, there's people that say, oh, you still at the music, and maybe, would you get a proper job and that kind of stuff.
Well, you know what? It's gas, because I'm sorry to cut across you, sorry. But it's funny you should say that. You touched on an amazing point. Like, anytime I meet anyone, like, they say, any acting roles? And they say, are you still at the band? And it's gas because, you could be doing auditions every week. And the worst thing you can nearly do is nearly tell someone. Like, I mean, I kind of get it. I'm a very passionate person. I'm very passionate. And like that, like when I started acting, I think people were kind of looking at me because I wasn't trained. And there were some things in certain circles, with certain people, and there was certain, I was probably made aware that I was a non-actor, as they call them, But to be honest with you, I don't care about whether I'm a non-actor or I'm not a non-actor. For me, I'm pursuing, conquering that craft and trying to improve that craft. I don't care what anyone thinks. Like, I have to kind of pursue that. But it's gas because, like, I auditioned for Game of Thrones 5 times. And I stupidly told people, like, when they ask me, I'm a very honest person in the sense that if someone says, any auditions, I'll say, well, yeah, I suppose there is. And, and it was the longest 2 years ever, like, when you're kind of constantly telling people, you're waiting to hear. And it's gas because Game of Thrones were like, well, we have you penciled for this role. And then it's actually because my agent at the time, we were both laughing to each other. Because the pencil went to a heavy pencil. They were saying you're heavily penciled, heavy, and we were kind of going, do we fucking get it? Yes or no? Just tell us, And it's a thing with acting, like, as in, if you are in for a role, you don't hear. It's very seldom you get feedback, or, like, unless your agent is following up or something. Like, basically, the first you hear of it is you see something on social media, like, filming has commenced for A, B, and C, and you kind of go, oh, well, didn't get that. So
right, yeah, and the casting, it's a hard game. My sister is an actress as well. She was on the show a few months ago, and she's had that life for years and years. And the thing is, it's one of these industries where I always, people see you on the screen, but at that point in time, you might have filmed that 6 months before or a year before, and at that time, then you mightn't be working. You could be down in Gardner Street on the dole, and people are like, "Oh, there's your man from that show," and they're like, "What's he doing here?" But they don't realize that there's a lot of in and outs being an actor or a musician. Sometimes you have no money, sometimes you have no jobs.
Well, yeah, I'm always reluctant to accept that I'll never be rich, because I still haven't surrendered to that concept, But it's very true. It's very true. Like, I mean, like, and people deal in the immediacy of the present, in the sense that, like, exactly as you're saying, if they see something on TV, like, they think it's very current. And like you said, like the last couple of, I think the last season of Vikings I did, they had it held over for a really long time. And I think I'd started and finished Vikings across 2 seasons, and I still hadn't seen myself on TV. So it was kind of mad in a way, just how it felt. But it enabled me to kind of, in the meantime, we were finishing the second album with Hail the Ghost. And then I'd actually started working with Raga Ragnars. She's one of the actresses. She's actually a double Olympian as well, but from Vikings. And she flew into Ireland. We'd written a song kind of online, basically through WhatsApp and Skype calls. And then she flew in, and we recorded it here in Jam Studios with Martin Quinn, who is an amazing individual. Amazing. He's actually recorded all the music, apart from Years Have Waltz. He's recorded everything I've done with White Mackenzie and Doris and Hail the Ghost. And he plays bass for Hail the Ghost live. He's an amazing fella. So we went down to his studio and we recorded that song. And then I flew out to Iceland and we shot a video out there. And then we came back, and then Vikings was airing. And then we released the album, and then we released that single, myself and Ragged, and then actually everything was locked down then, so we just got everything in before, so we were lucky.
Yeah, and it's a great song. It's a lovely song.
Oh,
yeah, it's a great song, and the video is very intense and dramatic. And obviously, the two of you being big enough characters in Vikings as well, when the video comes out, people are thinking, is this a promo for Vikings, or
Well, it's gas because we were on the Black Sand Beach, which is on the south coast of the island, And Ragu was really like adamant. She's like, don't go near the waves. She said, like, people lose their lives here all the time. It's like you get dragged out if you get hit by, and it was ferocious looking, and some of that kind of transmitted in the video, but it was actually ferocious. And there was a load of tourists there taking pictures and stuff like that, and I'm sure we were there screaming our heads off getting filmed. I think they were all looking around going, what the hell are those two lunatics doing over there, but anyway.
Yeah, that's great though. That's great. I mean, I'm going to come back to the act in a minute, but I just want to go back a little bit because I know obviously when you were doing the boxing and you won some titles and you won the World Police and Fire Games. So you trained with double Olympian Mick Dowling as well. So tell us about that experience, about your training, as a youngster with Mick and other people you've trained with.
Yeah, I suppose I was inspired by the Paul Griffins, the Wayne McCulloughs, the Michael Carruthers, Prince Nazim Hamed, all those. Mike Tyson I think I remember staying up in around 1988, 1987, 88. I stayed up late one school night to watch Tyson. I think he was aired on the BBC Grandstand or something like that. And I always had a love for boxing, but I think it was kind of I kind of went into the sport out of necessity. Like obviously my interest flew up after the Olympics. I think the '92 Olympics or whatever it was, and but like you're in a city centre school, it can be rough enough, and I kind of had to kind of do something, I suppose. So I joined boxing just to defend myself, and as well as having a love for it. So I actually first walked into Mick Dowling's club, Mount Talent, in when I was 16, which was kind of late, in 1996, and he's an incredible man. He really pushes everyone to be the fittest they can be. Notwithstanding the technical aspect of boxing, like, he would drive you. I've seen him, like, heavyweights kind of crying even, trying to keep up and stuff like that. He wouldn't have, this is all the stuff he did himself. Like as he said himself, he wasn't the most, technical of boxers or skillful of boxers, but he was the fittest and he worked the hardest. And like, he obviously got to 2 Olympic Games. He won 2 European bronze medals, and he was fearless. He's fearless. He's quite a small man. He's a fearless man. And we had Mick Sutton, who was like the old, he was like Mickey out of Rocky. He was the old trainer who was a good bit older than Mick and just took no nonsense and said very little, So I actually had to get 2 buses. I had to get 2 buses down to the club, and then when I couldn't afford the bus fare, I had to go around to my friend Peter's house and borrow his bike and cycle down. And that was it. Like, and a lot of the times, I think for say my junior cert year or just after, I wasn't really allowed box, and I used to say I was going around to Peter's to study because he was the academic, and I took his bike and go. So you'd be coming up with some different excuses when you'd be coming home with black eyes and stuff. So I blame Peter on a lot of stuff.
and you, at the same time, like, obviously, you were a cross-country runner as well. You were doing athletics, no? Did you start that at the same time or a bit later?
I was kind of pushed into that by default because I actually I was always injury prone. I remember I had I think a back injury or a shoulder injury that I still have today, actually. And I remember Mick saying, but are you doing your road work? Are you doing your road work for the boxing? And I'd say, yeah, of course, Mick, yeah. And he goes, great, you can come to my wife's running club. So his wife, Emily Dowling, who won the Dublin City Marathon, I think, in 1984, she had her own running club called Sports World. So I was thrown into that. And I remember, like, they had me out, like, running club meetings in Alsa and Santry and all these places. And I'd come out in a pair of, like, Washington Duke basketball shorts or something like that, and a pair of runners, and and they'd be throwing me into these things, and I didn't really like running, to be honest with you. The cross country was grueling. Now, I mean grueling. But I remember they said they were going to, when I was 19 years of age, they said we're going to enter you in the Irish Championships, Now, I didn't know at the time that it was the under-23 Irish Championships. So I was only 19. And I remember driving down and Emily saying to me, look, you'll be grand once you don't get, drawn in the lane with James Nolan. And James Nolan at the time was an Irish runner, and he was in the Olympian. He was in the Olympics, I think, World Championships and stuff. Fabulous runner. So, of course, the first heat, I'm drawn against James Nolan, and I'm running 2 lanes away from him. And I see this very good-looking man, very supple, tanned. He'd all the professional running singlets, and he was so flexible, and he was an amazing. You could tell this fella was just never off the track. The ladies loved him and all this type of stuff, and I was sitting there going, I don't even want to be here, So anyway, I ran. It was a 400-meter race, and I was more of a long distance runner, to be honest with you. So I qualified for the final of the Irish under-23 championships, and I qualified for the final as the fastest loser, around 52 or 53 seconds. So
Wow.
and Emily came over. She was delighted, and Mick was there as well, and they were saying, you're after qualifying for the final, and I was like, oh Jesus Christ, I have to do it again. So I remember. And at the time, I remember my legs burning coming down the kind of home straight. So I finished 7th, which is still 7th in the country at 19. So I remember we were in the warm down area afterwards, and myself and James Nolan were running down, and we were warming down after the final. He had taken bronze, and he wasn't essentially happy with the bronze medal, and he turned to me and he says, Jesus, it's not even my race. And I said, not even your race? It's not even my fucking sport, and and he was disgusted. He was shocked. I had to explain to him. I said, I'm not a runner. You know what I mean? I'm just I do boxing for Mick, and he just thought I was bonkers. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of happy memories.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, that's funny because he was probably thinking, oh geez, I didn't run so well today. But this guy didn't run as well as me, so that's a consolation. And you go, I don't normally do this.
Yeah, exactly. And I was only 19. So, but I actually was thinking,
that's brilliant.
Maybe I should have kept it up. Maybe I should have, but I was kind of always getting injuries, and then I took the boxing very seriously then, and then getting more injuries, and then my professional career kind of came in and stuff like that. And then you try and buy somewhere, you're paying a mortgage, and all the life just kind of consumes you.
Yeah. And tell us, obviously then when you were in the police force, the guards, and you were boxing, once you go into, like say, the guards and you're a boxer already, are they kind of like straight away going, oh, you have to box for the guards, and are they kind of pushy about that?
No, you can do what you want. But to be honest with you, I'll explain how that all came about. You see, I was boxing for Mick since I was a teenager, and I was applying to get into the guards. So when I left school, I had someone else. I remember going in on the bus and asking somebody, there was a CAO form you had to do, and it was like the deadline for the CAO form. And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to be a cop, so it doesn't matter. So I was passing it around, telling the lads to pick what they wanted for the crack, and someone put down applied biology, and I actually got accepted into the Institute of Technology, Tala, for applied biology. I didn't even pick it. One of the lads on the bus picked it, but I was actually I went in to start my college, and I didn't even read any of the literature that came to explain the course breakdown or whatever else. And I remember there was like 120 people there, and this guy was showing us around day one. I shouldn't even be admitting this, but it's kind of remarkably embarrassing at this stage, but looking back. But I was quite naive, and he was saying, this is your chemistry lab, this is your physics lab, and I was thinking, I'm not here to do that. Like I'm applied biology, and I did like biology, and I put my hand up and said, sorry, I actually think I'm in the wrong place. And your man said, sorry, and I said, I'm here to do applied biology. And everybody looked around at me, and I was like, oh Jesus Christ, what am I after saying? And your man said, well, if you had read your course breakdown, you'd realise that you do all these subjects for the first year before you specialise. And I went, all right. So that was my introduction. Now, and then to be honest with you, and
that's a bit like saying joining the ESB, and you're like, oh, the only thing I'm afraid of, lads, is electricity, and they're like, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, the thing is that I was still chipping away, trying anything I could. And there was a neighbour of mine worked at the Department of Justice, and she knew I was just like fanatical about the job I wanted to do. And she said, look, I have an opportunity for you to do 6 months work, 6 months temporary work in the Special Detective Unit. And as soon as I heard that Special Detective Unit, I didn't give a shit. I left college straight away. I walked out of college after 3 months, and I took the job. That was only going to be a job for 6 months.
Right.
So basically, I had a neighbour who worked in the Department of Justice, and she said, like, of this job for you, it's a temporary job, 6 months in the Special Detective Unit. This was around the same time that there was applications for the NCAD, and I was looking, whatever. Anyway, besides all that, so I actually left, and I left college, and I said I'll take the job, but it was only 6 months, and it was like pittance. It was like the lowest money you could get, and I took that. So I was working in Harcourt Square in the Special Detective Unit as a clerk from the age of 18, literally a couple of months after I left school. So I went from school essentially straight into the Special Detective Unit to work as a clerk. And I mean, the fellas in there, I don't think, I had a real heavy Dublin accent then. I was a pup. I was only 18, so it took me a long time to gain their trust, But it was actually from that point I heard that, I kept applying to try and go down and start this job. And I kind of got wind that I was going to be accepted. And I remember ringing the fella who was over the Garda Boxing Club, and I said, look, I box for Mick Dowling up in Mount Talent, and I'd love to be a part of the Garda Boxing Club. And I still hate that word, the G word. Anyway, so he said, all right, okay. He says, what's your name? And yeah, what weight do you box at? He says, I'll ring you back. Now, I was still a clerk at this stage. He rang me back about half an hour later, and he says, can you go to New York next week? And I was like, what? So that's how it happened. That's how it all started. So I met these boys before I even got in the door, and because I was accepted and I was working as a clerk, I fell in the. It was acceptable that I was on the team, and I remember coming back, and I remember drinking on the plane that time. I had a medal around my neck, and the tracksuit, whatever else. And I remember drinking Johnny Walker all the way home and vodka and everything else. And this was like, I was a kid, and I was never really into drinking. And I remember the air hostess telling us like, you got to rein it in, lads, or you'll be in trouble, And I remember I arrived. I could barely stand. I could barely stand when I came out into the arrivals, and my mother actually had to hold my head out the window. Going across the M50 heading home. I was in bed for 3 days afterwards. Yeah. And they're the uncensored stories.
Yeah, and so it began.
And so it began, yeah. So it began.
Well, I think with any job, and any kind of industry, when you have another skill as well, it can help you get in the door. So, for sure, I think that it's like footballers for years in Ireland have gotten good jobs because of, being stars or being an asset to a club or something. So I think for sure, yeah, that, when you were going for the Guards, that they were thinking, okay, well, this guy's a good boxer too. So it did help you, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think you still have to do the, the exam, and you still have to do the interviews and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know how much it helped me, a pup from Tala, grew up in the city,
I was going to say to you there, obviously, without getting into a lot of detail, but when your work as a detective then, and, that obviously led to working in Love Hate and stuff like this, but was that at that point when when you're working as a police officer and you're an actor or a musician, and those worlds don't usually collide. You don't usually see musicians who are guards or guards who are musicians, or you don't usually see actors. Maybe they leave it or whatever. So was that hard to combine both of those worlds?
All I can say to you is that they certainly don't collide. They certainly don't really coagulate. That's all I can say to you. But I will say is that, there's a lot of great people, and I've got a lot of great support. And to be honest with you, look, I think, individualism and self-expression, it should be promoted. I think, I think that if someone wants to dye their hair blue and put a ring in their lip, fair play. I think individualism is it promotes life. I think I think the way society's gone, I think we're becoming a stagnant kind of, you know, production line where people are wearing the same clothes and saying the same things. And I think that irrespective of, I mean, a job is a job. I mean, like, I worked in 5 supermarkets. I sold a newspaper with the Tala Echo. It doesn't matter what you do. And the more people I learn, I mean, no, I don't have any right to think that I'm any better than anyone at anything. I mean, to be honest with you, I've met homeless people who are unbelievably talented at something, and you know, and to be honest with you, I think that everyone has a talent, and everyone is a supreme human being in some respect, some form or other. And there's a facet of, everyone that is admirable and inspiring. And I think, to be honest with you, just no matter what job you have, it's a job. I take my work very seriously, no matter what it is. Like, no matter what I'm doing, I take it very seriously. I'm going to do a good job because I'm very old school, kind of purist. I'm a very traditionalist in a way, in the sense that you're only as good as your name. You're only as good as your word. And I think actions speak louder than words. So I think, to be honest with you, no matter what you're doing, if you have the support of your peers, that's what, like you say, a soldier on a battlefield. If the fellow soldiers say, that man is a legend and he'll do this, he'll have your back, he'll be beside you, that's what matters. And I think that those bonds are, it doesn't matter what the hierarchy say. I think if you're doing the right thing for the right reason, I think that's all that matters.
Here's a question for you, Kieran, and obviously it's a kind of a sensitive question, not so much for you, but for other people maybe sometimes, is that when you look at in America now with the scourge of fentanyl and stuff, and obviously you haven't been involved with the police in Ireland, do you see that as something that's come here, or that's something that we have to be very wary of?
I think anything that's harmful, needs to be, anything that's harmful needs to be managed. I think, to be honest with you, I think we need to try and keep each other safe no matter what it is. I tend to not watch. To be honest with you, I don't watch the news. I don't watch the news at all. I don't watch very little television because it's fundamentally negative. And to be honest with you, I think that there's day to day it can be a struggle trying to be happy in yourself without watching the television full of negative news and stuff like that. So I kind of try and confine myself to a very insular bubble, and I try and just kind of, be at peace with myself. But I'm very bad. Like, I'm very bad at kind of knowing what's going on around and stuff like that. I deliberately do that because essentially, if it's positive, it will find you. But I deliberately screen myself from a lot of negativity because I find it it stays with you,
Yeah. So tell us then, obviously your first foray into acting, is that story true that you were filming a music video and you went up to the casting director? Is that whole story true?
Yeah, it's true. We were filming a music video for a song called Heat Seeker when I was with the band White Mackenzie. And we were it was in the factory on Barrow Street, and that was like the nucleus for the screen actors in Ireland. And but it was also it was used as rehearsal space. I think Bowie, REM, Bob Dylan, I think they all rehearsed in there and stuff like that. But anyway, so a lot of the actors, that's where the factory, as it was known as, operated from, and there was a kind of communal area, a big blue table, and we were sitting down. It was a day out for us with the band. And Maureen Hughes, the Love Hate casting agent, was there, and she's a very inspiring character, and she's a great one. And Claire McGinley, her assistant, was sitting there, and I just chanced my arm and said, we had a bit of a laugh, and I said, would you let me read for one of the parts? So I read for the dentist, and I read for the character Ciarán Madden. Maybe I just connected with that character, they gave me the part. You know, I had no background, as you can see from my teeth. I had no background in dentistry.
Did you hide the fact that did you hide that fact?
Yeah. I did a course because I did a course. I, to be honest with you, before Love Hate, I didn't want anyone knowing I was a cop.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's out of the bag now.
Was that hard then to play, like, what, to play a character that you actually do in real life? Was that very hard to do? Did you have kind of a battle in your own, like, head about that?
Well, I did, because I mean, you could be talking to someone that's not there. Like, you could be like, so it's a very different world for me. I mean, you've got all these actors, and actors I've come to realize they can be very insecure, but they can be extremely confident as well, and you don't know which is which at times because they're actors. But so to be honest with you, I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't really understand the magnitude of the show until afterwards. Like, I thought, this is grand, as a bit of crack. Yeah, but I did like the kind of challenge of it. But I had to just convince myself everything was real. I had to convince myself that Nage, was a dirtbag and a really bad person, and that he was doing these things, and these things were real. That's because I thought, if it's real, then you're not acting. And apparently, if all these things, like, the camera will see if you're lying. It's the best lie detector in the world. And I'm still battling with that. I'm still trying to kind of navigate my way through the craft. And it's gas, because but I love the idea of playing something that's, like, I was lucky. I was really, really, really fortunate to land that role, and I was blessed. And fair play to Stuart Carolyn, who essentially was the showrunner and the writer and creator and everything else. He was like, he had his hands in all the pies there, and he's an absolute force of nature. Maureen Hughes and Claire McKinney, they all gave me a shot. Actually, here's a funny story. This is how little I knew about the acting world, and I still do. I was standing outside Maureen Hughes' office, and inside was David Caffrey, the director, who's worked on Line of Duty, and he's worked on Peaky Blinders, and he's a great guy. Everyone loves Caffo, life and soul of the party. And they were all in there with the producer, Steve Matthews, and I was getting called back. So I'm standing outside the room, and little did I know that literally rubbing shoulders with me was a fella called Tim Roth from Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so no, I didn't know who he was. So I'm standing there, and they I get called in. I'm kind of nervous, like, it's a different type of nerve. So I got called in, and they sat down, and we were kind of composed. And as an icebreaker, Maureen said we were going to ask Tim Roth, would he come in and read with you? And I went, all right. And they were all looking around, and they said, well, do you know who Tim Roth is? And I went, oh, well, I'd say if I Googled him, I do. I didn't know who he was, and I didn't know I'd been standing beside him for 15 minutes. He was doing a kind of a Q&A there at the time. And they just went, oh, well, we'll move on. It was lost on me, So I mean, and there's been a lot of them stories, to be honest with you. Like, I'd go over to Bow Street and we'd be doing acting classes and like improv classes and stuff like that. And, like, there was Shauna Kerslake, Lydia McGuinness, Rory Heading. All these people were in my the improv kind of group that we had, and they'd be talking about things like, actors, they feed on the latest film, they feed on the performances and everything else, and I wouldn't have a clue what they're on about, who they were talking about, and they came to kind of realize that, and they'd be always laughing, like, that he wouldn't have a clue, whoever is. So I've stopped kind of trying, but I'm slowly kind of getting to research certain actors that I really like, and trying to understand their work and what they did, choices they made.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. There's so many actors out there, actors and actresses, and some great actors. But sometimes people are really heavily involved in the day-to-day of acting, and they know everybody. But then other people just come, do the gig, go home, try not to be in that world as much. So there's both sides that can exist, no?
Yeah, I don't think there's any kind of rules for life, really, and I've stopped kind of trying to kind of confine myself or categorize myself in or compartmentalize things, and I just kind of go whatever, I just kind of float through the place trying to do a few bits, and I think as long as you're working hard and working honestly, none of that stuff matters. Who's who got what, who cares?
So you did Love Hate. How many episodes were you in Love Hate?
I was in 11 episodes across 2 seasons.
So when that finished, did you find yourself thinking, okay, I want to do more of this, or did you join the Bow Street Academy, or what? Like, what was the next step then for you? Did someone come up and say, "Oh, we have another role for you"?
Well, to be honest with you, as soon as I started Love Hate, like literally as soon as I started, I said, "This is what I want." And I felt, and naively so, I said to myself, right, I'll just go to America now and just work there. And I'll just, get these big films. I'll get these big TV shows. And like there was more tumbleweed than I've ever heard or seen in my life. So you kind of go, I was thinking, what the hell is going on here? Like,
Yeah.
this isn't part of the plan. So then I had to I met Maureen for lunch and said, Maureen, I want to act. What do I do? So I did go to Bow Street, and I remember myself and Barry Keoghan walking down the corridor one day, and he said, we're going to do some scenes. We're going to do some scenes tonight, keep the tools sharp, And I was like, yeah, great. I didn't care, like, just get in and do it, And it was a remarkable place because, like, Kathy Brady would come in and do workshops, and she's a fearless director. And you learn something from everyone. You had Chimmy Marcus, you had all these people, you had Frank Berry coming in to do talks, and all these different people, and you learn something from everyone. But you learn a lot of stuff from your peers as well. Like, some great people in there, like Charlie Bailey and Terry O'Neill, and all these great people. And you learn from everyone. So that's what I did, and actually the first role, the first role I got afterwards was actually two assistant directors from Love Hate, Dara Glynn and Jared Duffy, and they were doing a short film called Little Bear, and Maureen called me in to kind of do an audition for it. So once again, Maureen gave me another break, and I did that, and that was a very worthwhile, thing to do, And that's kind of where it kind of really started, because I was very, very anxious to do something after Love Hate. I was kind of going, look, Love Hate is amazing. It's the biggest thing in the country, but I need to kind of prove myself as something, as a proper actor, as a person who has some degree of versatility or some degree of understanding. I have to try and be an actor.
It's like a bug, I think, for people as well. Once you start doing it and you're into it, you think, okay, I want more of this. But it's very sporadic, isn't it? Because even if you're really lucky and you know some people or you meet people and have a good network, it can still be very sporadic because, the shoots don't always come up, and maybe they're in another country, and, you have to, some people are going over to LA for the pitching season, and it's a hard job, no?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And if you get the biggest gig in the world, it could last 8 or 12 weeks, and then you're unemployed again. So, and it's important to stay going. I think they say that great actors or good actors, they don't retire or they don't get sacked, or they just decide to stop.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something I won't do. I won't stop.
When you did that, and then obviously, how did the Vikings role come about then? Was it through the same casting agencies, or, how did you kind of get your foot in the door?
I was called for an audition. I was signed to Bow Street Talent Agency at the time under Claire McGinley. And at that time, it was a very good time, because I was up for a role with Sean Penn and Mel Gibson in The Professor and the Madman. I was also, up for roles with Game of Thrones. I was up for another film, and then there was the Vikings thing. And when Claire said to me, the Vikings role initially was just like a couple of lines one day, and I was thinking, oh, come on, I want more. I want something substantial. I want to be able to contribute. I don't want to go, and have to turn up for like one day of work, say a couple of lines and leave. It's like I want to do more. I want to be involved. And anyway, as it happened, the part that I went for in The Professor and the Madman, I ended up getting a very, very smaller part. I played Sean Penn's father, and it was actually cut in the end. And then Game of Thrones didn't work out, so the only thing I was left with was Vikings. So I went to do this, one day, a couple of lines, whatever else. And the director at the time was David Wellington, and we just got on, and he actually, I don't know, he actually came at one stage. He interrupted the filming, and he said, you're a really good actor. And I was saying to myself, I didn't know what the hell I'd just done. And I was trying to search my head. I was like, what did I just do so I can do it again? So I didn't know why he said that, and part of me still doesn't. But so they kept bringing me back. So they brought me back around 4 or 5 times. And the last time they brought me back, I was back to stay as a proper cast member. So I'd kind of worked my way back and worked my way up. And thankfully, Michael Hurst, the writer, he gave me this amazing role in the 6th season against, it'd be kind of like, against the leading lady, Catherine Winnick, who played Lagertha. So
yeah, in white hair, Lagertha, yeah.
Yeah, so I was blessed that they afforded me with that responsibility, and it was a great opportunity for me to show another side,
With Vikings, because as it's filmed in Ireland and Canada and Iceland, probably in different places, but is a lot of that location shooting down to grants and budgets and that kind of stuff? Because I was actually speaking to a Danish guy yesterday, and I was saying, what's the reaction like in Denmark and Norway to Vikings, and what's the reaction that it's not entirely filmed in the Nordic countries? It's filmed a lot in Ireland and Canada. And he said, well, he said a lot of people like it. He said, but of course, yeah, they would probably prefer it to be in these countries, but you don't know the way these grants or the way film shoots are funded.
Yeah, I think there's some incentive for people to come here to film. I think there are some tax breaks or something. I'm not really too sure of exactly what they are. I kind of don't really concern myself with that type of stuff, because it uses up too much brain power. But there are film studios. They're kind of mushrooming all over the place. There's one down in Limerick. There's Ashford. There's Ashford Studios is where Vikings is filmed. There's one I think opening up in Clondalkin area. Like there's loads of films. Up Belfast, I think Belfast, Netflix are kind of buying up Belfast as well, and all those studios up there. So, so I think they're the incentive is obviously being realised by these people, and it's good. It's good that they're here. It's good for Ireland. It's good for the economy. It's good for I know Game of Thrones are a perfect example of like their tours now around the Belfast area and surrounding areas up there of Game of Thrones kind of tours for people to kind of see certain locations. And that's only a positive thing. It's good revenue for the country.
Yeah, and like my wife and myself were big fans of Vikings, and we watched all the seasons and everything. And it was when Vikings came out, and it kind of came out. I think it was around the time of Game of Thrones, or and of course, the first thing people are thinking, oh, is this kind of trying to copy Game of Thrones? But then it developed its own identity, and it became a bigger thing. And because I remember, obviously, you do compare just the production and everything, and but I think Vikings turned into its own entity, and it was an amazing show.
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, Michael Hurst was an amazing kind of showrunner in the sense that he wrote every episode. I don't know how many episodes there was, maybe 80 or 90 episodes, and he wrote them all. And that's phenomenal work. And I remember one time we were filming a scene, and all the streets and all are, these little kind of windy streets were there, and people they're all dressed in character, and there's livestock, there's animals, there's fellas with weapons and everything else. And all of a sudden this little man appeared scurrying up this little road in the Viking village, and he was wearing a suit, tie, and the grey scraggly hair and the spectacles, and he was talking to the director, and then he scurried off back down the little kind of tavern road, and I don't know where he disappeared to. And someone said to me, that's Michael Hurst, the writer. I don't know where he came from, and he just kind of, but he was like always working away. And but I think character is a huge thing, and I think a lot of people fell in love with Ragnar, and he was an extremely magnetic character, and he was a huge character outside the show. Like everyone kind of fell in love with him, and he was a bit of a devil, and he was a bit mad, and he was a rogue, and everyone loved him. He had time for everyone, and he was adored. And I think all that stuff, all that energy transmitted on screen, and he's an extremely attractive man, and I'm very comfortable to be able to say that. I would change my face for his face in the morning.
Yeah.
But so I think that
Vikings, I mean, that's what it was, because like Lagertha is a very pretty woman, Ragnar is very beautiful, Bjorn is very statuesque and everything, and even the your co-singer, the Ragnar, she's a very beautiful woman as well. So I mean, it kind of, I suppose they tried to get the characters to be very tall, uh, well statured people, no, be good Danish kind of looking.
Yeah, yeah. I think to be honest with you, and that's how I don't know. Somehow I fell through the net, but being like this stretched, translucent giraffe from Ireland with grey hair. But in fairness, like Raga is 6'2". She's a very attractive woman. Lagertha, yeah, she's. I mean, Katrin Winnick is I think a year or two older than me, and she looks about 10 years younger than me. She's amazing, and we had to train for
An amazing martial artist too.
yeah, and she's feisty in the sense that like we had to train for 4 weeks on our own, kind of to develop this last fight sequence, which is about 135 moves, and I remember the first day that we were kind of trained separately, you know, we were kind of you trained separately to kind of to learn the moves and the fight sequence, and then we were put together, you know. So we had our own stunt trainers, and then basically we were put together to work as a kind of the two of us. And the first day, like she doesn't pull any punches. Like the first day, she caught me in the mouth with a sword, but my head shouldn't have been there, so that's fine, and I had no problem with that. And but she gives it 110%. And I remember actually the time we were actually filming the scene, and we did a lot of work. That it was the cold, wet mud of Ireland. One of those times, and it was extremely inclement. It was, it was the cold like infests your bones and stays there, and it was tough. But neither of us used our stunt doubles, and we did the whole thing over a couple of days ourselves, and it was grueling now, and we, I refused. I wanted to do it mine because I want to do it on my own, because it said in the script, it said like this is like an exhausting, grueling battle to the death type thing. So I wanted to be exhausted. I wanted it to be grueling, and she did the same, and she never cut a corner, and it was hard. Like we were fairly broken after it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and the strange thing about Vikings was, without spoiling it for anybody, when Ragnar's exit from the show, that's all I'll say, but for his exit from the show, people kind of thought, oh God, where's it going to go now? That's the end. But it didn't end there. I mean, and Bjorn was a great character, and Lagertha became a bigger character, and of course Ivor the Boneless, and he became a huge character, and it really it didn't die like people thought it might. It really went somewhere different.
Yeah, and I think, and I didn't actually work with Travis, but I think Travis and his influence, I think he really influenced the likes of Ube and Ivor the Boneless and Bjorn, and in how they behaved as characters. They all had little, and Fitzeric and stuff like that. They all had kind of character traits of that bit of madness, that bit of masculinity, that bit of energy. And I think that's why it carried on, because they all had strength and energy in their characters, and I think Michael Hirst saw that and kind of wrote for them.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And was the accent something that's very hard to get? Because I think obviously, when I think back to the accent, I always think of Floki. Floki, his accent stood out so much amongst everyone. And but I think everybody did a great job of having similar accents. And, as you said, you've Irish actors, Canadians, Australians, Danish. Ivor's Danish, isn't he? And so, I mean, everybody matched their accents pretty well.
Well, to be honest with you, I hadn't a clue what I was getting into, to be honest with you. And I remember Jordan, who played Ube, I remember asking him, like, what the hell? Like, how do these people speak, And he was saying it, like the melody of it was like a twitty, 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 this type of like a bird. And that stayed in my brain, actually. And then when you had Raga came across, she was like, she is Icelandic, like, you know what I mean. So she had a kind of an organic, and actually the man who played King Harold, Peter, he's an incredible person, a very, very open, very generous person. And he was also great at kind of, so like we'd all sit around and you'd kind of absorb things from them as well, you know. And I think, to be honest with you, by the time season 6 came, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew exactly how the character walked. I knew exactly how he spoke. I could have gone on forever with it then, but it did take me a little bit of time to get.
You know, when you were preparing for the role in Dublin, probably, and rehearsing, did you have to kind of get a dialogue coach or an accent coach for any of those scenes before you went over to film?
Well, there was one meant to be there, but he never showed up, I don't think. I actually didn't get any... I didn't get any dialogue coach or accent coach. I didn't get anyone on that, but that was fine. I didn't really care. I just wanted it to be right. And once I knew that it was okay, I was fine with that. Like, you know, but I think I definitely got there, but maybe I should have had one at the start. But see, my role was so small at the start that it didn't really matter. It was kind of in and out thing. But the role developed and became a big thing. So, but at that stage, I had the accent. At that stage, and I was very confident in the role. I was very confident with the character, and I was very confident that. And the more I researched like a lot of Viking history, and I came across the berserkers and stuff, like these wild, these wild animals of men that were just. And to be honest with you, but there's a lot of credit has to go to costume, but also the hair and makeup. And that was done under Tom McInerney. Now, Tom McInerney was the man who made Whitehair become this, you know, ferocious beast with the scarring and the dead eye and stuff like that with the trauma lens. So, like, you know, my part is only a small part of it in a way, or a part of it, a portion of it, because, like, you know, when you're dressed like that, when your hair is knotted and reefed and in its design, and you've got the scarring and the big beard, like that was my beard. I wanted everything to be as natural as it could be and as real as it could be. So it was fairly disgusting as well. Like my moustache was kind of going like from my nose right up in and inside my mouth. It was like terrible, like, but I didn't care. I wanted it to be real, and I wanted it to be dirty and raw, and so I didn't have to act, if you know.
Yeah. And, you know, how does it work? Because obviously they're filmed in different places. Do they have a certain group of actors that only film in Canada or certain scenes? Or would they say to you, for example, oh, this scene with Whitehair has to be in Canada? How did that kind of process work?
Well, there was part of the television show was filmed in Morocco. And I was kind of trying to push that Whitehair would because Bjorn was going to Morocco at the time. And I did present the notion I think Whitehair should go too, but no, it wasn't a runner. You know, I mean, it was certain things like, you know, if when we were in Cattegat, we in Cattegat, that was in Ireland because it was up in Wicklow, at the big lake. So Cattegat is Cattegat. You can't really kind of manipulate that. But like Floki went off to Iceland, so he literally went off to Iceland, and Morocco, that storyline went to Morocco, stuff like that. So it just wasn't part of say the Whitehair storyline that he would go to these places. So I was very much at the centre of Cattegat, and I was with Ivor the Boneless at the time. You know?
Okay. And were all of Rollo's scenes in France? Was that filmed in Ireland?
Haven't a clue. I wasn't there.
Okay, yeah, that was a bit earlier, I think. Yeah. It's yeah.
I don't know where that was filmed. I presumed it was Ireland. I haven't a clue, actually. Like it you know, that's one of the funny things about the acting. Like, you know, sometimes the scenes when they're all kind of put together on an assembly line, like, you know, there's the presumption that we were all there. It's gas. Like, there was a friend of mine he was doing a film with Sienna Miller, and I said, well, what was she like? And he goes, she was an X on the wall. you know, yeah, she wasn't in the scene with him, like, you know,
really,
that, you know, he was interacting.
Yeah, because you do hear of that now more, you know, in the music industry, you know, when two big stars get together, Bono and Beyonce, and they say, oh, what was it like recording that? And they go, well, I did it in Miami and she did it in Florida or whatever, or different parts of the world. And they're like, we never met up. And you're like, really? In the video, it looks like you're together.
Well, it's, yeah. And I think that's my only experience of that was that actually to start the lockdown, I'm kind of part of another band as well called Ears Have Walls, which is David Walsh. It's his project. And he decided he wanted to do a song with all the lads from Empire Circus and a couple of other musicians, and there was Laura that was in Ears of Walls and myself, and he wanted to do Life on Mars by David Bowie. I mean, he couldn't have picked a more ambitious song. And he played the piano for it, and basically he put this kind of montage of us together, and it's on YouTube, but it was all done separately. It was all done separately, so he put it together, like, you know, fellas in their bedrooms and stuff.
So let's talk about the music, you know. So when did you start? Did you start playing guitar at a young age, or what was your first instrument?
No, I basically there was a band that from Clondalkin called Doris, and they were mates of mine. We all used to work in Harry Ramsden's, and it was the Brit indie scene was on with Embrace and The Verve and Ocean Cutter scene and all these things, and they were that type of crew, you know. And I used to kind of I used to go drinking with them, and I was fascinated by this notion of them being in a band. So I went in and they went to play in a place called Sorahans on Wexford Street, which I don't know, it used to be called, I think it might have been called Carnival after it, but this was Sorahans at the time. And I went to see them play, and shortly after that I met them in the Belgard, which was a pub in Tala, and they were saying, oh, the drummer was leaving, you know, they didn't know a drummer. Now I had a cast in my right arm, I had a broken hand at the time, and I said, but I'll be your drummer. And they said, do you have a drum kit? And I said, well, I'm actually buying one tomorrow. And have you ever played drums? I said, well, not really. So basically I went out the next day, bought a drum kit specifically just to be in this band, and I turned up in Sound Lease in Ballymount with a drum kit that I didn't even know how to assemble. And I had a cast on my hand. This sounds ridiculous. I know, it's absolutely ridiculous. And so we started rehearsing, and I could literally use one foot and one hand. That was it. It's nothing much has changed.
Friends are very forgiving.
Well, they said to me at the time, they were saying, look, you know, ability wise, you know, you mightn't be up there, but your sound.
Yeah. That's all that matters.
You know? Yeah, it's all that matters. So I had to literally, and then we went we rehearsed an awful lot. And all of a sudden then we were playing headline shows in Whelan's. And we were doing Battle of the Bands and stuff. Lisa Hannigan was there, and there was a lot of bands. It was a good scene at the time in Dublin, and it was Whelan's was central to it, like, you know. And we were playing very regularly in Whelan's as a headline show. So I kind of had to learn very, very fast, you know. And we released singles and played The Village, and yeah, it was great.
Wow. And so from that, you know, did you stay on the drums or did you dabble in the other instruments?
Oh, yeah, sorry. After that, then basically, my daughter was going to be born in 2007. And I actually said to myself, you know, it's just too much. Everything is too much. I'm doing too much. Nothing has changed there either. But at the time I said, I'm doing too much. I'm going to have to leave the band. And we were kind of stagnated at the time. We were kind of faffing about trying to assemble this debut album, and it didn't happen, and blah blah. So I left the band, and I'm still great mates with the lads, and they were, you know, but I left the band for the right reason, because I was going to have a child. So my daughter was born in October of 2007, and within 6 months I was saying, I'm going to start my own band. And I rang my best mate Peter Fitzpatrick and said, give me Eamon Young's number. And he goes, what do you want it for? And I said, I'm thinking about, you know, starting a band. And he said, I'm not giving you his number because Eamon will plague you. He won't leave you alone. And I said, that's exactly what I want. So within 24 hours, Eamon was in my house. It was just me and him here. We were up in the spare bedroom. I had assembled a massive Pearl drum kit in the room. I knew how to assemble them then. And Eamon was sitting on the bed with a kind of shitty little Fender, cheap little thing. And he was looking at me and I was looking at him, and he said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, just fucking play something. And he goes, well, play what? I said, just play a chord. And then he played a chord, and I said, well, not that one. He goes, play this one. So, oh yeah, okay, now change a chord. And he goes, yeah, oh, that's perfect. And I'll put a beat there. So we were kind of jamming to this 2-chord thing, and I put a beat behind it, simplistic beat, obviously. And then we stopped and said, okay, well, who's going to sing? And he said, well, I'm not singing. I said, Jesus Christ! I was just so intent that I had to get this band off the ground. I said, well, I'll sing. So I had to try and make up something. And then White Mackenzie was basically born out of it, because we said we need to get Ian. I rang Peter, said, you're in a band. I don't want to be in a band. I said, you're in the band. And he resisted it. Now, he played a couple of shows with us, and he recorded a couple of songs with us. He played on wins, but he didn't even want to be in the band, but we made him be in the band, And then Ian Corr, who was an amazing piano player, we were saying, do you think he'd want to be in the band? And we were like, nah, he probably wouldn't. And I rang him, and I don't know, maybe he had nothing going on or something, but he said, I'd love to be in the band. So basically, he lived up in Bettystown. So we had to travel to Bettystown every week to rehearse. And I remember driving home at all hours, trying to get up for work in the morning. And, we were knackered. But that's how White Mackenzie started. And I remember Eamon. It was actually Eamon who taught me how to play guitar. And it was. I mean, we always laugh about it to this date. Where he showed me an E minor. And so he taught me how to play guitar. So I started writing songs from what Eamon was teaching me. And I turn up sometimes and go, I think I have a song. And they were like, what do you mean you think you have a song? And I was like, well, is this a chord? And they were like, well, not really. But can we use it anyway? Yeah, grand, whatever. And we were just, and he goes, I've never seen that. Whatever. I would just put my fingers anywhere where I could. And they were like, well, your guitar is in tune. So they were trying to figure out, them trying to intellectualize what I was doing. And I didn't even know what I was doing. So, and I'm not saying it was rocket science. It was kind of simple stuff, but that's how it started. So I became the singer, and then I was trying to learn how to. So then White Mackenzie was going for a couple of years, and then we, that kind of broke up, and it was me, Eamon, and Ian that held the ghost. And I think now we know what we're at. We know our identity, and we've been in the game long enough now. I'm 16 years working with, or maybe 17 now. I don't know what it is with the COVID, but I'm 17 years going to Jam Studios, working with Martin Quinn, who's an amazing man, and I think we have no time to think of how crap we are or how good we are. We just want to get on and make the next record.
Where did the name Hail the Ghost come from? Was that from something specific, or?
I was thinking that I always felt that White Mackenzie probably shouldn't have ended, and it was maybe it was premature, or maybe it was the right time, or it was just like that we were all pulling in different directions, and we didn't have this mutual cohesiveness where we knew what the hell we were. And I just thought that anything we do thereafter is in full respect to White Mackenzie. So it's nearly to respect the ghost of White Mackenzie. In a weird, convoluted way, that's where my head was at. And I thought then maybe no one will hear this music. Maybe it'll only be appreciated in retrospect. So it was all that type of thing I was thinking of, and I just thought it was like Hail the Ghost of, that type of thing. So I said it to Ian at the time. I remember we were in a bar in Dublin, and I said to Ian, look, I want the band to be called Hail the Ghost. And Ian was like, oh, Jesus Christ. He says, that sounds like death metal, he says, And I said, no, it's not. Like I said, it's like Red Hot Chili Peppers, like Super Furry Animals, like Radiohead. You make your name, you create the band behind the name, So we had to really pull and drag it, but we battered him into submission,
So a name can be something, because some people don't get it, but another person has a vision and they're like, no, this name is going to work, because a name can come from a book or a movie or some dream you had or something, and it can mean a lot to you, and you put it forward and somebody else goes, that's shite.
I totally agree with you. I mean, when I named White Mackenzie, it was because when we were younger, myself and my brother went to this place called Knockadoon for I think it was Sunshine House. It was called for kids that didn't have holidays, and myself and my brother went down there, and there was priests, I think, and they were telling the stories, and there was a ghost called Mackenzie. And he was carrying these chains and these lanterns at night, and I remember I was kind of half terrified, half mystified by the whole thing, but that stayed with me. And I love the notion of white album covers, like the color white. It's so powerful in a sense, like it's in a purest sense. And I just put them together because it's like Radiohead, things that don't go together. So that's where I was going with that one,
Yeah. And so let's talk a little, obviously, about the album Arrhythmia. And you recorded that in the same studios, in Jam Studios?
Oh yeah, we're residents down there. We love it. Yeah, Jam Studios. Yeah, that's down in Kells.
And that album, did it take a long time to put together? Was it songs over a few years, or did it come together very quickly?
It was a tough album. It was a tough album to assemble. We had about, I'd say, we didn't think we did, but looking back on all bits of demos and bits of stuff, we had about 20 songs, 30 songs, and uh, we were kind of constantly sculpting the songs and the sound because there was because of the protracted period of time that we were working, it it was quite dynamic in the sense of songs, so we had to kind of work to try and hold them in so that would have a cohesive feel. Like even the track listing, it was very specific and we did it for vinyl. We did it for, I think I have it here actually. We did it for vinyl. Yeah. So, but we did it. We did it that the last track on the first side was Mountain. Um, Everything was plotted specifically, but Mountain is like a final track. But it's like the final track on the first album of that energy, and then when you turn it over, you're straight into Black Karma, and that's kind of a bit heavy. That was our kind of nearly Cranberries-esque feel to it, like, and that was a song that Eamon wasn't actually sure would work. And then, like, there was other songs that didn't make the album. Like there was plenty of songs that didn't make the album, and then there were songs that, like, literally the last song that we put in it was Loveless, where I don't know, I didn't know whether I wanted that out on the album, like, because I suppose it was a kind of a heavy song, and I didn't know whether to put it on or not, and it was Eamon and Ian both said, yeah, no, it needs to go on. And I think the last song we recorded actually for it was Elegy. And Elegy was actually written, we started the notion of Elegy in 2015. Do you remember the Berkeley disaster?
Yes.
It was yeah, the Berkeley disaster. That's all you need to say, really. But anyway, we arrived to rehearsals one night, and we rehearsed in Ian's parents' house, actually. It's gas. I don't know how they've let us rehearse there for like a couple of years at this stage. I don't know how they don't hate us. Like, you know what I mean? And like, it's gas. Like, his niece would be over and the door would open, or they have a new dog and the dog would burst in the door. It's like, we're like, get out, there'd be mayhem. And his mother's there. How are you, Mrs. Carr? How are you doing, Mrs. Carr?
It's like the Reardons with rock music.
yeah. It's like, I don't know how they've tolerated us, to be honest with you. I wouldn't tolerate us. But anyway, so we arrived to rehearsal one night, and Ian was just very, very. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, actually, but it's too late now, says you. But he was very affected by the Berkeley disaster, and he was over there on a J1, and he could really understand and empathise with what had happened and the gravity of it and everything else. And I remember at that night, I'd never seen Ian, that affected by something. And I said, look, I said, we'll write a song. We'll write a song and as a tribute to those people, and we'll put it on the album. And it took so many different forms. Like, that song Elegy was written I don't know how many times, and it started off with this like Rufus Wainwright-esque type of piano piece. It was like a concerto piece, and it ended up taking on some different forms, and eventually it ended up with the version that we had. And I think we're all really, really happy with that.
Brilliant. That's really good. And so, obviously, when you're working as an actor and as a musician, if one of those gigs gets you more high profile or gets you noticed more, it has a benefit for the other thing. So did you find that once you did Vikings, it opened more doors for the music too?
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Like, everything helps everything, I think, and but like, it's like, I can't stop them. Like, I can't not do these things. It's in me, in the sense that I'm not going to stop doing them. But it's just, it's one does benefit the other, and it can also go against you. If you're shit in one, maybe that might affect something as well. Like, but I think essentially, like, once your standard of work is of a standard, I think it can only be a positive thing. We were invited to play the band to play in a place in Denmark, but unfortunately the coronavirus hit and we had to not go. But we were going to travel with the full band to Denmark, and actually what they had wanted to do is they'd want to assemble a couple of Vikings actors to give a Q&A. So they were hoping to get a couple of the principal cast. So there was, I think, 4 or 5 of us being lined up, and then they wanted a local band to play, and then they wanted Hail the Ghost to play, and then as part of that they were going to ask me and Raga would we sing Broken Wings. So it was a big ensemble of a night. So that would have been a bit of fun. And we were meant to go to London and stuff as well, to play in a venue in London. I think that guy was a big Vikings fan as well. So yeah, it did help. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, just actually going back there, something I was thinking of asking you, but I forgot, is this, like, there's supposedly a spin-off of Vikings, no? Vikings Valhalla or some other show coming out. Do you know anything about that?
You're well informed, yeah. There is, yeah. Vikings Valhalla. Valhalla is being shot at the moment. I think they're just closing off on season 1. It's written by Jeb Stewart, I think, who wrote Die Hard and stuff like that. So he's the showrunner. It's being ran from the same studios, Ashford Studios. That's all I know.
Okay, but it's very hard for the older cast members from one show to get into another because it's set in a different time, isn't it?
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe there might be 1 or 2 people. I don't know, but I think that there might be 1 or 2 characters reappearing. I don't know, but as different characters. I don't know.
You're laughing. You know more than you say. Don't worry. I suppose what I'm really asking is, is there any slot for you, or do you think you might appear in
it? I don't think so for me. I don't know about me. There's as I'm gone off to work on 1 television show at the moment, so I mean I'm happy, and I'm kind of in the running for 1 or 2 others actually, would you believe, at the moment. So I don't know even if that presented itself, would it be viable? I don't know, but to be honest with you, I think that if it's a thing you have the luxury of choice, I think then it becomes, then there's other things like, your decision might be necessitated by character. I think is character and story, and what is the character and story that might kind of complement you and the road you want to take. And then if it's a thing where you can make choices, I think then you're a lucky person,
Yeah, and the thing about it is also for anybody who works in different jobs, sometimes something comes up, but you're booked for something else and you can't do it. My own sister had that. She got a call. She was in for some show, and they were filming, and she got a call to be on the English Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and she had to turn it down.
Oh, wow.
Because she was doing the show, and
wow.
And then I think what happened with the show, I don't know if it went ahead or whatever, but she always says, the choices you make and the choices you take, sometimes you kind of look back and go, Jesus, I could have been a millionaire maybe. You know what I mean?
Well, and you never know what works. So you kind of just have to go with what makes you happy, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you don't know what works really,
No, we never know, and you can take a path and not sure where it goes, and it can lead to great things, but then you're like, oh, I should have gone. But I suppose the thing is, you can't have regrets. You just have to move on, don't you?
I'm a firm believer in that, and I'm trying, I suppose, because none of us know how long we've left, and I'm trying not to have regrets, and I'm also trying to kind of be, I suppose, a credible role model for my kids, where they kind of go, like, my son asked me once, excuse me, my son says, Dad, can I go to the Olympics? And I said, not only, of course you can, I says, of course, but not only can you go to the Olympics, you can win a medal, but like, so I think, don't put limitations on yourself. Like, it's hard, if you're trying to get out and do something, that the hardest thing in the world to do is to push yourself. And I think it's all about one thing, which is just taking part. And once you take part, you don't know what's going to happen. And it's gas, because now my mates, they they slag the shit out of me, like as in they like, what are you doing this week? Skydiving, like as in they just think I'm nuts because I'm writing as well. Like I've been writing.
Yeah, you're like the Irish Idris Elba, does everything.
Yeah, without the fortune and the and the success.
Yeah,
I'm like the kind of the Oxfam version of it.
yeah.
But the thing is that for now, but I'm okay with that. I mean, like as in like I'm writing a book at the moment, and the chart is on the wall here. It's a huge big chart, and I've the whole book mapped out, and I've started to put pen to paper, and that's the thing. My mates just like your feet will never leave the ground with my mates. It's I'm a laughing stock. But it's just something that I have to do. I've actually written a lot of films as well, a lot of short films, and I've written a feature film and stuff like that. And some of them are gathering dust and might or might never be made. But they're just something like once I get them out, then they're out. Then I can move on to the next thing.
Well, I mean, I think it's brilliant, and you've done so much already, and you're not old or anything. So I think there's a lot more you can achieve, and probably we will see more books and more music and more film and more TV and more everything. And one day you could be even the president of Ireland. Who knows? You're very ambitious,
I don't know about that. Yeah. I don't know. Although it's a nice gaff, I wouldn't mind having that house.
Nice gaff, yeah. So listen, Kieran, thanks very much. And I suppose the last question I have for you, what do you see yourself doing over the next year? Do you see yourself working a lot more with music or with acting, or it's up in the air?
I think I have a lot of work to do in acting. I think I have a lot of work to do. I'm not at the level I want to be at. I have an expectation for myself, and I want to get to that point where I want to leave something behind that's significant. So I'm not at that point. So I have a lot of work to do on the acting. With regards to the music, as soon as these restrictions lift, like I obviously, Hail the Ghost are going to do a third album, and we're really looking forward to that. But I'm also back writing with Raga. We're doing another song. And then David Walsh's project, Ears Have Walls. David is extremely prolific, and he's writing songs the whole time. And so I sang on 5 of the first 7 releases. So I think I'm going back into the studio with him as well. But I'm determined to get this book finished. That's what I want to do. I want to get this book finished. I need to get that done.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Kieran, it's been a pleasure having you, and you've told us a lot, and it's been great to look inside your world. And
I told you too much, Simon.
You told me too much. You see, that's my skill. I get too much out of them, and then they're like saying, "What the hell did I say that for?"
Yeah. I was saying, "Oh shit, can we delete all that and start again?"
Delete the whole thing.
It's great.
But thanks very much. We really appreciate it, and we'd love to have you on the show again in the future. When you have a lot more work done.
Yeah. Well, we'll wait till then. But yeah, I'd love to come back. And thanks a million. It was a pleasure talking to you. And thanks very much.
Brilliant. Kieran O'Reilly, everybody. Thanks very much, Kieran.
Thanks a million.
Thank you very much, Kieran. That was a really interesting interview, and we wish you the best of luck with everything you do in the future. And we hope that good roles and good things come your way. And it was a pleasure talking to you, and very interesting chat. Okay, so moving on to next week's guest. Next week, we're going to be speaking to Mairead Nimwini from Altan. Mairead is a singer and a fiddle player with Altan, and she has been one of the key figures in the Irish music scene over the last 30 or 40 years. So we would like to, talk to Mairead and find out her point of view about how the current music scene is. And, obviously during COVID, it was harder, and, she tells us her views about everything, and she talks about her experience and her career to date with Altan and with other projects. And also she's a presenter on TV with The Pure Drop and on RT and TG4. So we look forward to that chat, and it will be very interesting. And we hope you join us as usual. We hope you liked the show so far. We hope you've enjoyed today's episodes. So until the next time, I hope you look after yourself and your family. My name is Simon Kay. This is the Collective Whisper podcast. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.